I was going to do a video on this yesterday, and this is update the tournament policy, but some of the important notes that this is article, not a substitute for reading either the official tournament policy, nor is it a substitute for Konami's official blog post. Yu-Gi Organization advised Bolt to read both of them in their entirety yourself. These are just a few of the changes that they listed. Some important changes, including 45-minute round time becoming standard, and no asking your opponent if you know any of their cards. So let's get into it. I'm just gonna go over some of the more important ones. We have head judge stuff on a few things. We clarified that head judges cannot make decisions that go against tournament policy FAQs, operation documents, and etc. We clarified that the head judge can disqualify people, but they cannot suspend them. And they clarify that the assistant head judge cannot overrule the head judge if both the assistant head judge and the head judge are handling appeals. What does this mean? Even though the head judge's decisions are final, they need to stay still bound by the official policies. And then we also have just a few other things here. Duelist responsibility. Judges and duelists have had questions about retracting legal moves or revolving an illegal action that were not clearly addressed in the previous version of the document. This is some information that they added. So, some of the screenshots that there are from it, for some examples, we have the legal actions cannot be retracted. Being a legal action cannot be retracted. A duelist sets a card in the spell and trap guard zone and removes his hand from the card. The duelist may not choose to take back the move and re-add the set card to their hand. So it's just legal plays that you did that you can't take back. Like a duelist places Infernity Stage on the field in face-up attack position. They cannot change their mind and put the monster back in their hand, even if they never took their hand off the card. So if you're placing a card on the board, and it's already visible to both players, it's currently that's the play that you're doing. Some of the illegal actions that has to be retracted are kind of self-explanatory. Kind of like Duelist A has Skull Servant and Access Code Talker in the graveyard. They activate Monster Reborn from their hand and target Access Code Talker. Duelist B has no response to Duelist A's summon. Soon after resolving the effect, Duelist B realizes that they negated the link summon of Access Code Talker with Solemn Warning, since the card was an illegal target and the entire activation of Monster Reborn was illegal. Access Code Talker should be returned to the graveyard, and Monster Reborn should be returned to Duelist A hand. Duelist A is not forced to target the Skull Servant in their graveyard. So if you target a card that is a illegal target with something, you have to reverse back. So that is absolutely fine. Afterwards, we have time limits. The Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 in-person events are now 45 minutes long, which is absolutely fine. Tier 3 events were already 45 minutes, but now should be used for Tier 1 and Tier 2 events. Special assistance, duels can resubmit deck list online. Well, for the special assistance, if you or someone you may know requires special assistance for seeding and a disability, service animal, or anything else, please read the section thoroughly in the policy document. You'd have to go to the tournament organizers or the head judge of the event and see what they can do if you have a disability or a certain service animal, or if you need a seat, if you have certain conditions that you need to go to the restroom. One of the biggest one is deck registration. Duelists can resubmit deck lists submitted online, but only to accommodate for a new Forbidden Limited list or a new product release. Duelists cannot change their deck list for any other reason, and this only applies to deck registered online. They cannot drop from an event or re-register in an attempt to alter their deck list. So, if there's a new set coming out like Cyberstorm Access, let's just say that as an example, and there was a regional the week or an event the week after, a nationals or something, and your deck list needed to be updated, you would be allowed to if you did apply online. Or if a new ban list comes out, let's say in June, then you can adjust your deck list then. After that, we have sleeves. This just clarifies that duelists cannot use a sleeve that are too big, so if you use standard sides, those are marked as marked cards. So you have to get Japanese size with your standard sleeve. You cannot use top loaders or hard cases for sleeves because those are considered marked cards. They set a requirement for tinted card sleeves. They clarified that either sleeve used in double sleeving can be clear on both sides. It doesn't matter if the inner or outer sleeves. So you can have one completely clear sleeve and one sleeve that's of color, or you can have both that have clear sleeves. But who wants to do that? We clarified that double sleeving only means up to 2 sleeves per card, so that's absolutely fine. Tournament material. We have added a new tournament material, zone markers, to indicate block zones. We clarify that the head judge does not have the right to go against tournament policy by allowing or disallowing tournament materials that are prohibited or allowed in the policy. We added information for the live stream matches. So, one of the good things is we can now have zone markers as tournament materials, all because of Kashtira, but we should have had it before because of Ojamas and a couple other cards like Ground Collapse, I think it was. So there's some cards that can get around it. Field layout. They updated the example text for placing cards on the field with the text used in Speed Duel. They are just keeping policy and wording consistent between documents. So you can use Speed Duel cards in the TCG. You cannot use Speed Duel cards in Speed Duel. Or you cannot use TCG cards in Speed Duel. Note taking, this is a big one. We separated the allowed and not allowed examples, and they added some examples addressing points of confusion from duelists and judges. So this is more like, oh, if you have mandatory effects that you have to resolve throughout the turn, like, oh, Magnamut, declare effect, okay, you can't write that down, but you still have to do the search at the end phase, which is pretty easy to remember. Then you also have things like, oh, if you send a Scarm, you can't write that down because that's a optional effect. You cannot put a indicator on top of your deck if you activated something that does not allow you to draw for the next turn, like Reckless Greed. But there's just a lot of things in this document that I definitely want to go over, but there's so much that they did, which is great. What changed? They clarified what is public knowledge covers, and they dealt with public and private knowledge. So public knowledge has some specific limitations. Some duelists and judges have taken card text is public knowledge to mean you can ask information on absolutely any card. This is not the case, and this has been clarified. And for private knowledge, clarification in this section should make it easier to tell the difference between public and private knowledge and easier to understand the kinds of penalties that can occur for the private knowledge. So some of the things on the public knowledge and private knowledge parts. So it's the number of cards in the duelist hand and deck, side, main, extra deck, the number and names of the cards in the duelist graveyard and face-up banished cards, both players' current life points, any notes taken by either side of the duel, which cards were searched, set, summoned, destroyed, banished, activated, or targeted by an effect during the current turn. That is the biggest change. Because you are only allowed to know what card your opponent has pretty much searched, summoned, if it was flipped face down, destroyed, banished, activated, or targeted during that turn. Private Knowledge does not allow this. So which cards were searched, set, summoned, destroyed, banished, activated, or targeted by an effect during the previous turn. So that pretty much means you cannot ask your opponent anything on the next turn, like, oh, what cards do I know in your hand? You can keep that private because it's the next turn. They made it where public and private knowledge are a turn-by-turn basis, and that is one thing I do really like. Now, some of them are private knowledge cannot be revealed. A duelist may not reveal that he or she has honest in their hand unless they are legally activating the card. A duelist may not reveal their set Mirror Force unless it has legally activated. Or the other private knowledge, Duelist A cannot ask Duelist B, do I know any of your cards? That is now an illegal question to ask, and it could lead to a couple warnings. Card hand deck verification. They split the examples of not appropriate for a judge to verify to appropriate for a judge to verify into separate tables to make the information easier to process and retain. And they added some examples to it. And it's just, oh, if you have a card in your hand and you call a judge and you're asking them, can I activate this right here? Or how does this card work in this position? That's illegal to do. If you activated a card and then you go, oh, hey, this is going on. How does this work? So there's that. So handling card loops. We added a restriction for controlled loops without net gain, die roll effects, or if different actions will result in the same start or endpoint. So it's just intended to prevent slow playing or stalling by performing pointless actions with a controlled loop. Now, if you guys remember, you have the 6 Samurai loop where you just keep looping your cards over and over again, keep looping them, and you're getting infinite Bushi counters, I believe they're called. And now you can say, oh, I'm doing this action for this amount of times, and there. So you don't have to slow play or stall for time. Now, people had the misconception that this stopped loops like the Telefon FTK. It does not, because it has a net gain of you gaining life points and your opponent losing life points, so that loop is still 100% legal. So a lot of your FTK loops, some of them, you have to do that specific point. And yes. And also we have a little confirmation on this. Yes, this is, you only roll the die once and treat all further rolls as the same number, so you don't have to roll the die repeatedly. So it's just you roll it once, and if you're doing the FTK, cool, that's fine. You're just going to be treating that one roll as your rolls for all of the parts for the FTK. Conceding has been changed a bit. The two main takeaways in the document here seems to be that you cannot ask your opponent to concede under any circumstances. In addition, you cannot concede a game or match after results is already decided, i.e. you may not reduce your opponent's life points to 0, then concede the game to them, as that is part of things like, oh, betting, bargaining, and all of that. So they made it a little more known of what not to do. And also, we clarified that some events will not allow conceding or may have additional requirements in order to concede. Time extensions, time extensions is just a new section to the document, and it's just covering all the time extensions, like, oh, if there's 3 minutes left on the clock, and the judge call takes 7 minutes, they get 3 additional minutes to play the rest of the game. If time runs out and they're in during the judge call, or if they have a judge call and time runs out, they had to end the match right there, which is sad. Reporting the match result. The winner has to... So if the match concludes before the time is called in the round, you have up to 5 minutes after the round concludes to submit your match result. If you do not, the duelist responsible for submitting the match result will given a game loss applied to the next round. So this also includes other infractions and penalties from that document. So now, instead of lollygagging around for however long, you have to do it ASAP. This is a good way to crack down on players that aren't reporting their match results, and I really do like that. Tiebreakers is just the additional tiebreakers will make it much less likely for duels to end up with identical tiebreakers and tied for the same final standings. This section is also much easier to read now, which it actually is, because I was looking at it yesterday and I actually understood it. So let's go to the tournament policy doc, and I want to show you guys this. Breakers? Yeah, tiebreakers. As we can see here, this is how it is. A duelist has completed 3 rounds of a tournament and currently has 2 wins and 1 draw. The duelist has 7 points, 3 points for each win and 1 per each draw. That equals 7. So, how the structure is for the numbers after your name, or yeah, it's after your name. It goes 18A, that's how many points you have. Then you have the 7-6-2-6, which is your opponent's match win percentage. Then you also have the 6-7-7, which your opponent's opponent's match win percentage. Then you have the 0-5-3 being the sum of the square of the round the duelist lost. In this case, the duelist lost round 2 and round 7. So it's 2 squared and 7 squared equals 4 plus 49 equals 53. So this actually helps you figure out how Konami has this going on. Now, I don't want to spend too much longer on this, as there's quite a bit to go over, and then we have preparing for play, and this is just for just a lot of neat little things that they have that are going on, and we were right at tiebreakers. So the next one is bribery or a collusion, and prize splitting can be allowed under specific circumstances. We added information about prize splitting at the tournament organizer's discretion within set parameters. So read the policy document to determine if splitting is applicable to your particular event. Reporting the match. This covers all the end of match and reporting tournament results. Match results for the match concluded before the end of the round must be submitted within 5 minutes. If the match result is not submitted in that time, the duel stays. So this is what they're going over. Here's the tiebreaker. Again, sorry about that. So this one is that they updated the unsportsman conduct and what infractions can happen outside of an event. And also, they included text notifying people that they will be added to the suspended players list if they are suspended. So it's just updating the unsporting conduct, and it does not have to occur at the event. It can occur outside of the event. Like, yeah. Some forms of unsporting conduct will be penalized if they do not happen at the event. So Konami could technically get you on if you are outside of an event and they see you. Which one was the one? Right here. Person who engages in unsporting conduct or behavior that endangers or detracts from an event will be removed from the venue and subject to additional penalties. You also have slow play, marked cards, drawing extra cards, deck errors, tardiness, procedural errors, and I remember reading that if they see you, like, there's so much more for this. There's also cheating, illegal games, matchup guns, wagering, buying, selling cards or other items, predatory trading, prohibited items, privileged information, impersonation of Konami employee or representatives, violating Konami's community code of conduct, which you can find here, and suspended from organized play, which is quite a bit, because there's quite a lot that can happen with that. And that's all that I wanted to go over. Card legality. This section covers information about cards, or pretty much just related to legality, like, oh, TCG cards and TCG, OCG and OCG. And then for marked cards, we clarified that you must drop from an event if you have a marked card that you cannot replace. There was a bit of confusion as to whether or not a duelist has to drop, or could choose to continue the tournament, receiving upgraded penalty each round. So we wanted to make that clear. So I do want you guys to go and look over this whole entire policy document, because there is quite a lot to go over, and I don't have 2 hours just to go over this whole entire document. I'm going to have it linked down in the description below, but anyways, I've been Bolt Spider, and see you guys in the next video, and goodbye.